We're going to get started with the morning. Thank you all for being here bright and early. Hope you enjoyed your breakfast. I have the pleasure of getting us started on the multi-level government solutions plenary this morning. Last time I saw you all, you were putting your sensible footwear on and getting your warm cookies and going out on your sessions on the move. I hope you really enjoyed it. I heard lots of great feedback, and I see lots of smiles right now, so that feels good. We have a slight change of plans this morning. Mayor Helps, who's going to be joining us, is feeling a bit under the weather this morning, and so out of an abundance of caution, she's going to stay home, but we're going to Zoom her in, and she can still take part in the plenary and in the discussions. We're hoping we'll be able to see her again tomorrow, but time will tell. So in this multi-level government solutions plenary, we're going to explore new ways of collaboration and cooperation. Like we all talk about how we live in silos, right? We all know the world is full of silos, and we all are, challenging ourselves to break them down. Silos in our administrations, in our jurisdictions, in our professions, and just in our perceptions. I think it's really interesting just to think about the pandemic and how we saw different orders of government collaborating and cooperating in new ways. Clearly it wasn't perfect or seamless at all times, but I think administrations really did change a lot in the last few years, and those silos have started to shift. So we really want to think about how we can learn from this and carry it forward into our climate emergency response work. People often quote Einstein, right, when they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I think I speak for us all. We don't want to be insane. Let's try new things and aim for different results, particularly when we have these grand objectives in front of us around net zero emissions, climate resilience, doing so in an equitable and inclusive way. These are formidable challenges in front of us, and so we need to try these new ways of cooperating. So in this plenary, we're going to hear from local leaders on how they've been working with partners and with networks and their constituents to achieve this kind of change. We'll be hearing from Mayor Rebecca Alty from the city of Yellowknife, Councillor Christine Poirier from Livable, and the familiar face above us here, Mayor Helps from the city of Victoria. If you'd like the support of interpreters, please be sure to get a headset. This session is going to be in both French and English. And my partner in moderating today is Geneviève Toulin, who's the project director of MSIP at FCM, who's our mobilizing partner here at LCF this year. Geneviève is going to take a few minutes this morning to share some of the complementary results of the investments from Infrastructure Canada to the Municipalities for Climate Innovation program, and highlight the bridges of partnership that have been built between the federal government, municipalities, and community organizations. So over to you, Geneviève.
Thank you very much, Megan. Bonjour à tous, ça me fait très plaisir d'être ici cette semaine et puis de pouvoir partager un petit peu le travail qui a été fait au cours des dernières années, en particulier avec le soutien du programme Municipalité pour l'innovation climatique. Today's topic is extremely relevant to FCM and to MSIP in particular, and I'm very interested to hear the perspective of our elected officials here today, Mayor Helps, Mayor Alty, and Councillor Poirier. For many decades now, FCM has been the voice of Canadian municipal government and has advocated for to be sure that their citizens' needs are reflected in federal policies and programs. And in terms of programming, for example, FCM has many different programs that help deliver tools to support municipalities to tackle local challenges, and that includes, for example, building more climate resilient and healthy and equitable communities. And this is part of the work that MSIP has been able to support over the past 6 years. The program is now completing at the end of this month, but it focused on building the capacity of Canadian municipalities to help reduce GHG emissions reductions and adapt to climate change. So the program received $75 million from Infrastructure Canada in 2016, started working with municipalities in 2017 up until March this year, and has been able to provide grants and capacity building support to municipalities and support more than 750 of them across the country over the past 6 years. Les activités envers les bénéficiaires du programme se sont terminées en mars et le programme complète maintenant sa période de dissémination des résultats. Au cours des 6 dernières années, le programme a pu soutenir financièrement plus de 320 projets auxquels ont pris part près de 400 municipalités, des projets d'action climatique à travers le pays. So I'd like to go over a few highlights of the results of the program to celebrate the accomplishments that all of you have done through this work over the years. So with MSIP funding, municipalities were able to increase their internal capacity on climate, integrate climate considerations into asset management, develop action plans, complete feasibility and operational studies, and also implement small capital projects. Approximately half of our projects focused mainly on climate mitigations with the reduction of GHG emissions, and the other half focused mainly on adaptation and reducing the impacts of climate change. One of MSIP's most anticipated offers was for climate change staff grants that supported the salary of a dedicated municipal staff person on climate action. And through that offer, 65 positions were funded to support over 80 municipalities across the country. And those positions, those staff people in climate action help develop and implement action plans and work towards implementation across the country. And now over 45% of these positions have been extended past the program. So I'm very happy to see that this work will continue going forward. Yeah. Okay. Le programme a aussi vu les niveaux de maturité des municipalités qu'il a soutenues augmenter avec le temps. Par exemple, le nombre de municipalités qui possèdent un plan climatique a presque triplé au cours des 6 dernières années. Ces plans prévoient des cibles de réduction des gaz à effet de serre de 900 000 tonnes par an à court terme et 30% d'entre eux visent la carboneutralité d'ici 2050. De plus, grâce au soutien du PMIC, 28% de la population canadienne vit dans des municipalités qui ont développé des plans d'adaptation à des risques climatiques spécifiques. Similarly, the number of municipalities that have started implementing their climate action plans has more than doubled since the beginning of the program. And over 60 municipalities have now reported having already secured follow-on funding to continue their activities going forward, activities that they had started with MSIP. So this represents over $239 million in additional funding towards climate action at this point. And in addition to grants, MSIP provided capacity building support, including awareness raising, technical assistance, knowledge sharing, network strengthening as well. This is particularly interesting in relation to the topic of this morning, with a large network of partners and organizations now linked to municipalities on climate action. And this network grew from about 400 organizations, including municipalities at the start of the program, to over 1,300 at the end of the program. MSIP staff and implementation partners delivered over 1,400 capacity building activities across the country over 6 years. That's about 2 a day, well, 2 per business day. Increasing the awareness and skills in climate mitigation and adaptation of participants. Many municipalities reported that this support had been key for their progress on climate action. Some of the most popular activities included courses for municipal staff and elected officials, communities of practice, coaching, and peer exchange. De plus, de nombreux produits de connaissances ont été développés pour les employés et les élus municipaux, pour les soutenir dans leur travail en lien avec l'action climatique. Ceci comprend des cours, des guides, des outils, des études de cas, des articles et des vidéos. One of our most recent publications is an introductory guide on integrating equity, diversity, and inclusion into municipal climate action. This guide was developed in partnership with ICLEI Canada and one of our other programs at FCM, the Green Municipal Fund, through the Partners for Climate Protection program. Copies of the guides are available here at the conference, so feel free to see our booth in the main hall to get a copy of them. We also will be releasing in a couple of weeks a life cycle guide on operations and maintenance for climate resilience. So these two knowledge products and several others that were developed through the program will also be presented as part of the World Cafe session at 10:30 as well. So if you are interested in any of these tools or resources, feel free to join the session as well. Also, I'm happy to announce that all of these resources will remain available going forward even after the end of the program. So finally, I wanted to thank all of you for your interest and dedication to climate action. I know that between our commitments to emission reductions and what is necessary in terms of adaptation going forward, the task may be daunting. But in reflecting back on what happened over the past 6 years through MSIP, but all of the other work that has been done as well, it made me realize that a lot has been done already, and we've progressed quite a bit over the past few years. So it gives me hope that we'll be able to tackle the next challenge ahead and be able to move more towards implementation going forward. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks, Geneviève. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that most people in this room have been involved in some way, shape, or form with an MSIP-funded project. Like, I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. It had such reach, and it's quite inspirational to see. Yeah. And it's nice to now have an opportunity to kind of reflect on, the lessons that we've learned through that experience. So I'm glad we're all here today to talk about that. Our plan for this session is Geneviève and I have a few questions, lined up to bat back and forth with our participants. But first, we're going to give you an opportunity to just open us with some initial reflections just on how you're grappling with, the challenge of building more climate resilient and healthy and equitable communities. Share with us a little bit about, how you're working with different orders of government and what you've learned from that process, and a little bit of what Geneviève said. What brings you hope, as you move forward? So we're going to start with you, Mayor Alty, please.
Okay, perfect. So of course, you get invited on a panel, and I'll stick to that plus a bit more of what I'd like to talk about, because I think the private sector and NGOs have really been key partners for us at the City of Yellowknife, and I might say more so than the territorial and federal government. They're great funders. However, a lot of the innovation is coming from the ground up, and the city's been able to make some changes to our bylaws and programs recently. So I just want to touch on a few of those. So the City of Yellowknife, we recently did a whole overhaul of our zoning bylaw, and the final approval happened in March 2020, and our focus was about making more inclusive communities as well as climate resilient. So one of the things is that we've upzoned all of our residential areas. So now single-family homes can now have up to a 6-plex. And of course, there's a few lots in towns that are a little smaller. Their max would probably be a duplex. There's setbacks and all that stuff that would dictate whether you could have a duplex, triplex, 4-plex, 6-plex. But that was a big thing. We wanted to make sure that we were building complete communities as well. So on the periphery of the downtown now, you can have a small business. And one of the big things I pushed for was for urban agriculture in the residential areas. And what it was is about getting people to be able to, say, rent their lawns to somebody else to come and grow food. And that's what we saw happen just this summer. Before, somebody could have had a home-based business and they could have grown all their food on their lawn. But for this woman, she rents an apartment, and so she was able to reach out to this landowner, have their front yard. If you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see it, I think. There we go. So that's the front lawn. It's in a really prominent place. It's right across the school from an elementary school. So now residents are driving by, and now they're seeing this past summer, this whole yard was transformed into a garden. And again, it wouldn't have been possible without our changes to the zoning bylaw. And the other thing now that everybody walks by and go, wow, that's what you can do with a front yard. She just put on, we paid her to do a workshop for residents so you could learn how to transform your lawn into this productive space. So we do have, through our rec programming, some opportunities to, in the late winter, early spring, to learn how to do tomato seedlings, but also hoping to do this workshop again where residents can learn how to transform their lawn into something more. One of the other things that, in the downtown, we did the open parking, but a couple years ago we started doing car share spots in lieu of parking requirements for residential. And so if you have a car share at the residential area, that's one spot can take per 8 units. And so that reduces the amount of land that we require to house our vehicles. We can now house humans. In Yellowknife, our downtown, 40% is surface parking lots, and so we really want to be able to use that land better. And the other car share co-op that the city was, the first car share co-op, which has an electric vehicle, the city was able to, the group of people came to the city, and we've become the anchor tenant. So we were able to, from 8:30 to 5, we're paying for that car, and now we don't need a vehicle to drive around to get from meeting X to Z. We're now able to use this car share co-op, and they're renting it on the weekends and in the evenings. After 2 years, the partnership, we just become like a regular person and rent it by the hour, but we were able to get the project off the ground with that initial capital and being the anchor tenant for that project. So Yellowknife's a town of 20,000. I'm sure there's smaller municipalities that you could think about that too. The other one is we're developing a district heating framework, and so the private market's really been a leader in district heating, which is in Yellowknife pellet boilers. And so it's plumbing and mechanical companies that, they went and connected multiple private lots. And going through the process was a bit of a learning curve for the city. And now we're really making sure that we've got the process set up so when the next person comes in, we're able to do it really quickly. And we also want to look at the next greenfield. As much as we want to push that far off, we want to continue to focus on infill. But the next greenfield development, we can have it as a district heating project. And there was part of it also is, of course, important to celebrate successes, but there's still a lot that we need help from the other orders of government. In the Northwest Territories, it's the only jurisdiction in Canada that doesn't have a building act. We've got the National Building Code, and then the city's created a building bylaw, but that's just through a clause in the city's towns and villages that says we need to protect the health and wellness of our residents. We've really been pushing the territorial government that there should be that act that gives us the authority to have a building bylaw. And in many other jurisdictions, that's where you can get some of those climate change elements throughout the Northwest Territories or throughout the province. Right now, the city's the one that's doing the building bylaw, and we've made it for over 10 years that maybe it's been 15, 20 years that it has to be Energy Guide 80 and up, all the buildings. And then recently we made a change to our building bylaw where you also have to have the Energy Guide sticker prominently displayed in the home on final inspection so that residents, when they're going to purchase, can see right away the energy requirements. Again, all homes have to be Energy Guide 80 or up, recognizing there's the new EnerCan system, but that's similar language. The other big area that we need to do more, and I think at the federal level, is on waste management. And so in Yellowknife, right now it's an election season, and so there's the push for people to make it free to dump at the solid waste facility, because people are littering white appliances, the stoves, the dishwashers, the washer and dryer. And I'm like, wait till you see how much it costs to open the dump up and have free dumping. Because the next question the media asked was like, well, so you're okay with the tax increase? And they said, no, I think we can do this without it. And I said, oh, wait till you see how much garbage costs. But we need to, national sword policy's been out for a number of years, and what are we doing with recycling across North America since then? So really, can the city of Yellowknife solve these big recycling challenges? How to have extended producer responsibility? I don't think so. I think we need to come together as a country and say these are the standards across, and this is how it'll be dealt with, because we do have a lot of purchasing on Amazon right now with TVs and all that stuff. So as much as we can put fees on purchasing at your local store in Yellowknife, the majority are coming from outside of the territory. So if we lift those fees, we're not actually going to be recovering our costs. So I'll put a pause there and look forward to more discussions later on. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. I sense you could go on.
Yeah. I love this topic.
Thanks so much. And how about the experience in Livable?
Well, I have this whole presentation for you.
Let's get
if
her
you
up.
want. Yeah, it's time to. All right. Is it possible to put the first slide on? Puis ma présentation est en français. Donc, for all of you who don't have the headset, you absolutely need it if you don't speak French, because it's exclusively in French. So it's at the back there. I'll give you a minute.
I'm gonna go grab my coffee then.
Oh, wow.
I'll grab my coffee. It's actually really disappointing. I was reading the interviews with all these councils and questions about climate change. It hasn't hit yet. I haven't really thought of it. I'm like,
You're not feeling local impacts at all?
obviously, we just had a crazy windstorm. Like, it's generally windy in the fall, but that's... This is more of a question of, like, somebody else will deal with it, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately. We're losing them. We're losing them.
Christine, I think you can start.
Yeah. Okay, I'm being told I can start.
Yeah.
Some people. Il y en a qui vont manquer les premières phrases.
There we go. Perfect.
OK. Alors, bonjour, je m'appelle Christine Poirier, je suis conseillère municipale à la Ville de Laval. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Je tiens à remercier Mme Meaney pour l'invitation. Si je suis ici devant vous aujourd'hui, c'est parce que Laval est en train d'opérer un changement de cap important en matière de lutte et d'adaptation au changement climatique. Ce changement-là, on ne l'opère pas seul, mais en partenariat avec les citoyens, avec les municipalités avoisinantes et avec les autres paliers de gouvernement. Au cours des prochaines minutes, je vais vous expliquer d'où nous venons à Laval et vous présenter quelques-unes des initiatives innovantes qu'on a mises en place grâce à une approche collaborative. Donc d'abord, Laval, oups, ça n'a pas changé. Il faut que je pointe vers où? Vers ici peut-être? Vers où est-ce que je dois pointer? Where should I point?
Je pense ici.
There?
If you're able to change to the next slide.
Can you please change? Thank you very much. Donc, Laval a une population là, de 443 000 habitants. C'est une île de 276 km². Elle s'est développée comme une ville de banlieue typique, donc en périphérie de Montréal. C'est normal si vous n'en avez pas beaucoup entendu parler. On est dans l'ombre médiatique de Montréal. Donc, c'est une île, c'est une ville, mais c'est aussi une municipalité régionale de comté, soit sa propre région au Québec. Ça nous donne des avantages quand on discute avec le palier provincial. On fait aussi partie de la communauté métropolitaine de Montréal, qui est un organisme de planification, de coordination et de financement qui regroupe 82 municipalités autour de Montréal. Next slide, please. En 50 ans, la ville est passée d'un territoire majoritairement agricole à une ville du 21e siècle. Ça s'est vraiment développé de manière fulgurante. Next slide, please. On peut voir en gris bientôt. On the next one. I'm going to try again. Oui, ça marche. La zone urbanisée, ça, on peut voir en gris la zone urbanisée qui prend de l'expansion. L'image en haut à gauche date de 1965 et celle en bas à droite de 2016. L'espace en blanc est pour une grande partie un territoire agricole protégé par la Commission de protection des territoires agricoles du Québec et aucun développement y est possible, sauf pour l'exploitation agricole. Il faut savoir que d'ici 2031, la CMM va compter sur à peu près 320 000 nouveaux ménages, 150 000 nouveaux emplois. Toute cette population-là, il va falloir la mettre à quelque part. Donc, il faut vraiment penser à notre ville différemment pour pouvoir accueillir ces nouvelles personnes. Comme toute banlieue typique, next slide please, la ville de Laval a été créée autour de la voiture. Donc, it's not changing. Can you please change to the next slide? Oui. Donc, vous allez remarquer sur la photo qu'il y a beaucoup d'asphalte, il y a des bungalows, mais notre économie est basée autour, là, vraiment, il y a beaucoup de commerces de détail, donc des grands centres d'achat avec des maires de stationnement tout autour. On a aussi 5 grandes autoroutes qui traversent la ville, donc qui viennent vraiment la défigurer et qui rajoutent un grand niveau de complexité à des choses qui devraient être simples, comme une balade en vélo ou le maintien de corridors écologiques qui permettraient à la faune de se déplacer. Heureusement, tout n'est pas complètement noir. On a aussi 3 stations de métro, 2 lignes de train de banlieue et 1 axe d'autobus à haute fréquence. Il n'en demeure pas moins que nos principales sources d'émissions de GES proviennent des transports à 70 %. Et puis après ça, la deuxième source principale, c'est le commerce et l'industrie. Next slide, please. La Ville de Laval reconnaît depuis longtemps l'importance de la lutte au changement climatique. En plus d'avoir signé de multiples déclarations, elle fait le suivi de ces GES, de l'émission des GES sur le territoire depuis 2005. On est d'ailleurs très fiers d'être membre de partenaires pour le climat de la Fédération canadienne des municipalités depuis 1998. On est membre de toutes sortes, on a signé toutes sortes de déclarations et membre de plein d'organismes. Next slide, please. Dès 2011, on a mis en place un programme de compensation, j'ai pensé que ça pourrait vous intéresser, de compensation GES visant à compenser la perte de puits carbone entraînée par le développement du territoire lavallois. Donc, chaque nouvelle industrie qui s'installe doit payer, chaque nouvelle construction sur le territoire doit payer pour ce fonds-là, qui est ensuite dédié à des initiatives qui visent à réduire nos émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Par exemple, on a eu une subvention pour les bâtiments, pour les résidences qui se chauffaient au mazout, donc chauffées à l'huile pour changer vers l'hydroélectricité. On a eu une subvention pour l'achat de véhicules électriques avant que le gouvernement provincial et le fédéral en mettent la leur. On a eu une subvention pour l'achat de vélos électriques aussi, jusqu'à ce qu'on l'arrête parce que finalement, les gens l'utilisent plus pour le loisir que par nécessité. Donc, notre objectif, c'est vraiment, avec ce fonds-là, de subventionner des initiatives qui vont réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre dans la ville. Next slide, please. Les engagements de la Ville envers la réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre n'ont toutefois pas suffi à la protéger de l'impact des changements climatiques. En 2017-2019, la Ville a connu de graves inondations et a même dû obtenir l'aide de l'armée canadienne. Pour nous, ça a été vraiment des événements majeurs. Nos enjeux climatiques, là, y abondent. On a des îlots de chaleur à travers la Ville et je suis certaine que plusieurs de vos municipalités sont confrontées à ça aussi. Donc, évidemment, des secteurs qui connaissent des grandes augmentations de température en période estivale et puis que ça va toucher principalement des populations vulnérables. On a, donc c'est bien certain, next slide please, on a plusieurs collaborations, donc à l'échelle, d'abord à l'échelle locale. On a mis, pour pouvoir revoir notre territoire, on a d'abord établi une vision pour la ville de Laval avec une cible de 2035. Et le nom de cette vision-là qui est ressorti après les consultations, ça a été Laval urbaine de nature. C'est ressorti très clairement de la part de la population qui souhaitait une plus grande protection des milieux naturels, avoir accès à la nature à proximité de leur domicile. Et puis pour arriver à cette vision-là de la ville, donc d'avoir des quartiers de courte distance, des quartiers à échelle humaine, ça a été une consultation avec les employés de la ville, parce que Mme Meaney parlait de silos tout à l'heure. Eh bien là, on a vraiment été les défaire, les silos. Consulter les employés, consulter les citoyens pour arriver à cette grande vision qui est un document sur lequel on se base pour l'ensemble de nos actions et de nos politiques là, qui ont découlé ensuite. Next slide, please. Donc, et là, on est rendu à une étape de notre avancement qui est incroyable. On est en train de vivre quelque chose de très spécial à la Ville de Laval. On n'est pas encore nécessairement à la réalisation et au passage à l'acte, mais on est à l'étape de prendre la vision et de la transférer dans la réglementation de la Ville. Donc, cet été, on a adopté un nouveau code de l'urbanisme. Un code de l'urbanisme qui va intégrer beaucoup de données qui nous proviennent du fédéral, du provincial, des échanges qu'on a eus donc, sur les changements climatiques qui vont vraiment intégrer les meilleures pratiques en adaptation au changement climatique. Et là aussi, on a consulté énormément. Bon, d'abord, c'est une exigence de la loi là, au Québec de consulter quand on adopte un nouveau code de l'urbanisme, mais on a été au-delà dans nos consultations. On a fait en sorte d'avoir vraiment des consultations qui ont visé les groupes environnementaux, qui ont visé les agriculteurs, les promoteurs immobiliers, les citoyens. Donc, on a vraiment été très loin dans nos consultations, et aussi avec des ateliers d'idéation avec des employés d'organismes locaux, des experts, des universitaires. Donc, c'est un form-based code qui permet de voir la ville autrement. Et puis, c'est intéressant d'entendre Rebecca parler aussi de ces changements réglementaires à sa ville parce que c'est ce qu'on est en train de mettre en place aussi à Laval. Donc, un code qui reconnaît l'existant parce qu'on ne veut pas faire peur aux gens et dire « Ah, là, les quartiers de bungalows, ça va tout devenir des tours parce qu'on veut densifier la ville. » Non, On reconnaît l'existant, les bungalows, les quartiers de bungalows vont demeurer des quartiers de bungalows, à l'exception qu'on permet une densification douce avec l'ajout d'un deuxième logement dans le sous-sol, tout en respectant le code du bâtiment, bien sûr. Mais on vient permettre une densification douce dans les quartiers existants, mais on vient aussi, surtout, je pense que le grand changement majeur, c'est de permettre une plus grande densité sur nos grands axes, nos grands boulevards qui traversent Laval, qui étaient, pour la plupart, jusqu'à présent, exclusivement du commercial. Donc là, on vient permettre une mixité d'usages avec du commercial et du résidentiel, et puis des plus grandes hauteurs le long de ces grands axes-là. L'objectif, c'est qu'à terme, au fur et à mesure que ces édifices-là vont se redévelopper, on va avoir la densité suffisante pour avoir un transport en commun qui a du bon sens, pour que les gens puissent utiliser le transport en commun pour leur déplacement. On a aussi des pourcentages minimums de verdissement pour chacun des terrains et de minéralisation maximum. On va venir aussi réglementer les grands stationnements pour avoir un minimum de canopée. Donc, c'est vraiment des changements majeurs pour la ville de Laval, mais c'est des choses qui passent bien dans la population à cause de toutes les consultations qu'il y a eu puis du processus là, pour y arriver. On va aussi, peut-être un autre exemple, obliger des stationnements pour vélos, prévoir des stationnements avec des bornes de recharge électrique dans les grands immeubles. Donc ça devient obligatoire avec notre code. Un autre exemple de collaboration qui est important pour nous, qui est à l'échelle régionale, puis un exemple de ça va être le Forum sur la mobilité qui a été organisé par Laval en 2018 avec des municipalités avoisinantes de la couronne nord de Montréal. On se rappelle là, que 70 % de nos GES viennent du transport, donc d'avoir une entente entre les municipalités sur les mesures à mettre en place pour améliorer la situation, c'était extrêmement important. On était d'ailleurs accompagnés aussi par le monde académique dans cette démarche-là. Et cet été, le gouvernement du Québec a annoncé qu'ils étaient pour investir 15 milliards de dollars dans la réfection d'une des grandes autoroutes qui traversent Laval pour ajouter des voies réservées au transport collectif et au covoiturage. Ça, c'est directement lié au pacte entre les municipalités là, qui était sorti de ce forum. Donc, c'est une collaboration qui est importante, intermunicipale. On a aussi une collaboration, peut-être parce qu'on est une des grandes villes du Québec, la troisième plus grande, une collaboration avec les 10 grandes villes du Québec. Là, on a un représentant de Québec qui est ici, il y a des gens de Montréal. Donc, on a une grande collaboration entre notre nouveau maire qui s'appelle Stéphane Boyer et les maires et mairesses des 10 grandes villes. Dernièrement, ils se sont mis ensemble pour proposer la mise en place d'un pacte vert pour les villes du Québec. And I think you can switch to the next slide, please. Un pacte vert pour les villes du Québec, parce que les investissements qui sont nécessaires pour l'adaptation au changement climatique sont majeurs. Et puis, ils ne sont pas juste vécus par la ville de Laval, ils sont vécus par les grandes villes, les autres grandes villes du Québec aussi. Donc, on a décidé de faire front commun. Donc, on a juste un exemple d'un investissement qui est nécessaire à Laval d'ici 2030, et c'est demain matin, pour mettre nos usines de traitement d'eau aux normes. Il faut investir 750 millions de dollars d'ici 2030. Le budget annuel de la ville est de presque 1 milliard de dollars, mais il demeure que 750 millions, c'est une somme gigantesque et puis qu'on a absolument besoin de l'implication des autres paliers de gouvernement pour y arriver. On avait demandé un investissement important de la part du gouvernement du Québec cet été dans le cadre de la campagne électorale qui avait été balayée de la main par le premier ministre. Mais là, maintenant que les élections ont eu lieu hier, vous pouvez être certain que dès la semaine prochaine, on va se remettre à faire front commun et à faire des demandes auprès du gouvernement provincial pour arriver à atteindre des objectifs qui, dans le fond, nous unissent tous. Alors, next one, please. Next slide. Quand les besoins paraissent tellement grands, sont si grands qu'ils peuvent paraître inatteignables, moi, je pense que ça peut faire du bien de se retrouver dans les petites actions concrètes dans nos villes qui font une différence pour les citoyens d'un quartier. Alors, je vais vous laisser sur ce dernier exemple qui a été fait en collaboration avec la santé publique de Laval. Donc, c'est un outil collaboratif pour lutter contre les îlots de chaleur. On a développé avec la ville, avec la direction de la santé publique, différents indicateurs et on a pu mettre ça sur des cartes. And you can change to the next slide, please. Donc, vous allez voir sur la prochaine une carte de la ville. If you can, could it be possible to change to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Donc, des cartes qui permettent d'établir des priorités puis de trouver des solutions adaptées aux problématiques. Donc là, ce que vous voyez en rouge, c'est vraiment nos hotspots à la ville de Laval. Donc, plutôt, ça nous permet de cibler nos actions. On a également, donc avec la direction de la santé publique, des listes des personnes vulnérables dans la ville. Donc, quand il y a des épisodes de forte chaleur, ou même dans le cas d'inondation, on a aussi ces listes-là pour les territoires potentiellement inondables. Eh bien, on peut appeler les gens, faire des check-ins avec eux pour s'assurer qu'ils aillent bien. Donc, on a cette connaissance très fine de notre territoire qui nous permet d'amener des actions ciblées, notamment des actions de verdissement pour contrer les îlots de chaleur. 80% des îlots de chaleur à Laval sont situés sur des terrains privés. Donc, on a mis en place avec un OBNL local un programme de plantation d'arbres et de déminéralisation qui fonctionne. Et d'ailleurs, à ce sujet, je vous inviterai, and you can change to the next slide, please, à assister à la conférence de mon collègue, M. Yann Dessureau, qui est conseiller à la Ville de Laval et qui va présenter là, une session faire une petite présentation au prochain panel « Atténuer et s'adapter, faire progresser la résilience à faible émission carbone ». Et c'est à 10h30 tout à l'heure. Donc voilà, merci.
Thanks so much, Councillor. And thanks everyone for flipping. I understand it went from channel 1 to channel 2 and back on channel 1. So don't give up, it's on a channel. You'll find it either on 1 or 2. Mayor Helps, are you still with us?
I'm right here.
Wonderful, okay, thanks. Please share some of your just initial reflections and on how you're working in networks and partnerships and with other orders of government. Thanks.
Wonderful. Yeah, really inspiring to hear Councillor Poirier and Mayor Alty and all the work that's happening. And that map is so powerful. You can really see where vulnerable residents live and then what needs to be done to address that. So that was a really good visual to leave us with. I'm going to speak about not so much some of the projects we're working on in Victoria, and you can't see my slides and me at the same time, so that's okay. We've chosen that you can see my face so I can I guess, be as present as possible with all of you. But what I am going to talk about are some of the challenges and opportunities, I think, working with and through other orders of government to achieve the goals that we need to achieve. And I'm going to talk about two things. One, the City of Victoria's plastic bag ban debacle, because I think it's relevant. And then secondly, I want to talk about the role of intermediaries like FCM, like ICLEI, like Community Foundations of Canada and Canadian Urban Institute and others. So the key point that I want to make with respect to the plastic bag ban, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of a play-by-play, is that if we're really going to meet our goals by 2030 and 2050, but let's just start with 7 years out, that it shouldn't really matter who has what level of authority. The key point is that whoever is best empowered to make decisions that are going to streamline and have an effect towards the goal should be the level of government or the order of government that gets to make that decision. And just I'll walk you through. So in 2016, some students and others came to us and said, please ban plastic bags, they're bad for the environment. And we even had somebody dress up as a plastic bag princess and come to City Council wearing an outfit of plastic bags and made a very strong plea. And so we listened. And then our staff, and again, Christian talked about the importance of involving staff and community and everybody in a consultation. So our staff started to look at, okay, how many plastic bags are we throwing out every year? 17 million plastic bags every year were going into our landfill. And as Rebecca said, wait till you see how much waste costs. This has a real cost. cost. There's a real municipal cost to this. And so we looked around the country and around British Columbia to see what others had done. And what we found is that even in places like Montreal, they had banned plastic bags, but they had made an exception for thick plastic because that was apparently reusable, and so that wasn't captured. And so our staff drafted an amazingly strong, not just a ban on plastic bags, but a real shift to reusables. And we did great community consultation, and everybody was really excited. We adopted the bylaw in December of 2017. And then all of a sudden, an organization called the Plastic Bag Association of Canada, who really no one thinks existed before the bag bylaw came into effect, sprung up and took the city to court. And they argued that the city didn't have the authority to ban plastic bags because it was about regulating the environment, and that is provincial jurisdiction. The judge disagreed with that assessment and said, no, the city is regulating businesses. That is fully within its authority. And then that decision was made a month before our bylaw was set to come into effect. Our bylaw came into effect in July of 2018 to great fanfare. We had a plastic bag free festival, and we had a youth video contest because we wanted people to feel inspired. And so we asked youth to figure out the best way to help people remember to bring their reusable bags. Anyway, so we had a festival, we showed the youth films, the Downtown Victoria Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, everybody was there, the bylaw went into effect. Well, then the Plastic Bag Association went to the BC Court of Appeal and made an argument again that we hadn't, we'd overstepped our jurisdiction because we were talking about the environment. And they went back to some of the early council videos that showed us talking about the environment. And the BC Court of Appeal agreed with them, and our bylaw was null and void. So we've got community buy-in, business buy-in, youth buy-in. Everybody is excited about this, except because we don't, quote unquote, have a responsibility for regulating the environment, the bylaw is null and void. Well, then what happens? Then we have to go groveling to the province, asking them to allow us to have the authority to ban plastic bags. And now, by the time the province made its decision to do that, and not just Victoria, they made a provision that municipalities in British Columbia could ban single-use items, but they still had to ask the province to approve the bylaws. That happened in September of 2020, and in April of 2021, our bylaw was back into effect. Okay, that is all a problem. That is all a problem if we're trying to get anywhere fast by 2030. And so I think, again, the point that I'm making by telling that story is that it shouldn't matter. And there's going to be legislative change that's required, but it shouldn't matter who is doing what, as long as everybody is doing the thing that is going to get us to the goals that we need to get to. So I thought it was useful sharing that case study. Now on to something a bit more positive, which is the role of intermediaries Mary uses the words, Mary Rowe from Canadian Urban Institute, the words connective tissue all the time, but I really think that's important. FCM, ICLEI, Community Foundations of Canada, and others, when the federal government doesn't know how to best get on the ground, they work with these intermediaries to get money out into our communities. Geneviève talked about the MSIP program. That's a perfect example. Yesterday, I was delighted to attend the Canadian Urban Institute session, and they talked about the Healthy Communities Initiative, where Infrastructure Canada, and it's almost unbelievable when you think about Infrastructure Canada and their traditional way of funding. So kudos to them for having the courage to take this leap. Gave $60 million to Community Foundations of Canada to fund projects in our communities across the country. And I was blown away yesterday at the CUI session, seeing all of the things that had happened in our communities with a result of Infrastructure Canada's funding. And if a community garden or a food program or any of the other things that the folks from CUI shared yesterday had to make application to Infrastructure Canada, A, it would take a million years, and B, they don't have kind of and this is not a criticism of Infrastructure Canada, their job isn't to understand community at the local level. Their job is to grant major funding for wastewater projects and transit and so on, and that's great. We want them to do that. So I think my point here is that for Infrastructure Canada and other federal and provincial agencies, use these intermediaries because they are connected to our communities and they know what's going on the ground. And again, it doesn't matter who's doing what. What's important is meeting our goals. And one more thing, and then I'll close out and look forward to the Q&A. Kudos to FCM, who worked really hard during the pandemic to get the Canada Community Building Fund doubled. And that, of course, for local elected officials, we know what that is. It's money that comes directly into our communities to combat climate change, unrestricted. And I think that needs to grow exponentially between now and 2030 if we want to meet our goals. And so I think there's a responsibility for all of us to not just have the doubling be permanent, but quadrupling or quintupling or whatever it's going to take to meet those goals. Because at the local level, we know we can deliver, we show we can deliver, and it shouldn't really matter who's doing what as long as we all get to 2030 together. I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks for helps. That kind of segues nicely, actually, into how we wanted to start the Q&A, which was, you said kudos to FCM on the work they did over the pandemic with the Community Building Fund, I think it was. And we just wanted to reflect a little bit on, the unprecedented challenges that we had over the pandemic, but also what it showed was possible to us. And do you take any lessons from that into how you want to act on climate change in your communities, reflecting on those past 2 years? So I'm going to start with you, Meryl.
Sure, and I think yesterday was touched on that climate change is going to be here forever, and so this is a marathon and not a sprint. So sometimes when I think of COVID, our staff worked really hard, they worked overtime, they had no vacation time, and a lot of them are burnt out. So whenever we're like, wow, look at all we did, and I was like, but at what cost? So how do we also had, though, plenty of great pilot projects, or like this money was flying out the door, our Reaching Home funding got doubled, so we were able to show what we can do when we had double the Reaching Home funding. Our Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as gas tax, was doubled. We always know that produces great results. So I think there's lots of pilot projects or kind of like one-off stuff that started, and now it's just a case of trying to get that funding in place for the future. So a bit more agility, I guess, in regards to funding would be one thing that I'd appreciate.
Good point. Elsewhere?
Oui, alors pour nous, je dirais une des choses marquantes là, qui se sont passées durant la pandémie, c'est qu'on a vu les citoyens s'approprier les espaces verts de la ville. Vraiment s'approprier les parcs, les forêts urbaines, les fréquenter beaucoup plus. Donc, je pense que c'est venu à mettre un accent encore plus grand sur l'importance de préserver nos derniers espaces verts en milieu urbain. Et puis de les aménager. Donc ça, c'est sûr que on souhaite capitaliser là-dessus. Évidemment, nous, on vient là, du côté politique. Donc, c'était un des engagements avant de se faire élire, là, d'investir beaucoup plus dans l'acquisition là, de milieux naturels pour leur protection à Laval. Mais ça vient donc mettre encore plus là, de pression pour que ça se passe, puis que ça se passe rapidement. Et puis, ça vient mettre l'accent là, sur l'importance pour la santé des citoyens, pour leur santé mentale, d'avoir ces espaces-là à proximité là, de leur domicile. Donc ça, c'est un gros take-away pour nous là, de la pandémie. Donc, c'est quelque chose qu'on peut pérenniser, là, évidemment, donc, pour lesquels on peut mettre là, des mesures en place pour faciliter l'accès aux parcs et espaces verts.
100%. And how about you, Mayor Helps? Oh, we're not quite hearing her right now.
I know, I was muted. It's classic. Just, building on the other answers, I think we really did realize during the pandemic, well, as Rebecca said, like our staff are also burnt out because they've worked so hard. But also, going to the importance of green spaces and public places for people to gather. I mean, that became so evident really quickly when, people had to socially distance, people had to socially isolate. I think but could still be outside together. I think there was a reckoning in the mind of our public about the importance of those green and public spaces, and I think that is really something that we can capitalize on going forward. Making more investments in those green spaces, and then we had a situation in Victoria that was very difficult to manage. We've got this beautiful parking lot right on the ocean, and that's meant to sound funny because we don't need parking lots on the ocean, and we need green spaces on the ocean. We do have lots of green space on the ocean, but coming out of the pandemic, we saw a big uptake in people using green and public spaces, and so we took back half of the parking lot for people, and we cars can still park on half, but now half has picnic tables and lounge chairs and so on. And again, you'd think that coming out of the pandemic, there'd be great support for this. And I think generally there was, but there's still that battle that we all have to face, even when we know things that we've learned in the pandemic, that these green spaces and public spaces are important. It still sometimes feels like a battle against cars or cars versus people. And anyone who has any insights about that and kind of getting rid of that debate would be very helpful. So I think that's one of the challenges coming out of the pandemic. We know the need for these spaces, but there's still this kind of throwback to the 20th century about, other uses for public spaces that aren't so people friendly.
Can I jump in and add one more thing?
Yes.
The unfortunate thing about COVID is just the amount of waste that's been created and just how far we've gone back when it comes to reusable cups. And so anything we can do to be like, it's okay to use your reusable cup, it's safe, masks, etc. There's so much waste that's being produced now. So that's an unfortunate.
A lot of nodding heads with that one, for sure.
Yeah, I sit on the board of one of the main, un des centres de tri, un principal centre de tri au Québec pour le recyclage. Et c'est incroyable, la quantité de matières recyclables qu'on reçoit avec les boîtes pour les livraisons à domicile. Donc, les gens qui sont mis à commander en ligne, c'est vraiment de très mauvaises habitudes de consommation. Et puis ça, on espère que ça va arrêter, mais en même temps, c'est tellement pratique. Et puis toutes les épiceries livrées, les plats pré-préparés qui génèrent tellement de déchets. Donc ça, c'est une problématique importante là, à laquelle on ne touche pas encore. Là. Parce que les gens sont attachés au confort de leur voiture, mais sont aussi attachés à cette facilité-là. Hein. Donc, c'est difficile d'aller dire aux gens « OK, maintenant, vous ne pouvez plus faire ça » ou « il faut faire… » C'est très politiquement sensible, je dirais. Les choses qui peuvent faire une des plus grandes différences dans les changements climatiques sont parfois les plus difficiles. Donc, je ne l'ai pas mentionné tout à l'heure, et puis là, ce n'est pas lié à la COVID, mais c'est lié aux habitudes de consommation des Québécois, puis peut-être même, je pense, des Canadiens en général, mais juste la passion pour les VUS. C'est une problématique importante. Et puis parmi une des mesures qui avaient été là, analysées par l'École polytechnique là, de Montréal dans le cadre du forum sur la mobilité qui avait été organisé à Laval, là, que j'ai mentionné tout à l'heure, il y avait 80 mesures qui avaient été analysées en termes de leur impact sur les changements climatiques, puis celle d'interdire les VUS, c'était une d'entre elles qui aurait eu le plus grand impact pour réduire l'émission de GES. Mais mettre la main là-dedans, c'est comme un suicide politique quand les gens ils sont tellement attachés. Mais puis aussi, c'est pas quelque chose que les municipalités peuvent faire toutes seules. Là. Ça prend absolument l'aide de paliers de gouvernement plus haut. On est comme une poupée russe. Hein. Nous, à la municipalité, on est au centre, et puis ensuite, il y a, pour nous, en tout cas, il y a le provincial, et puis ensuite le fédéral, et puis toutes les actions des autres nous influencent. Donc, on est la tributaire des actions des autres aussi. Mais ça demande beaucoup de courage. Donc, ouais.
So true. Over to you, Geneviève, for the next couple.
Yeah. Je vais poser la question en français parce que je vais la poser à vous d'abord, Madame la conseillère. On a parlé de plusieurs points qui touchent à ça déjà un peu, avec la question de la lutte au changement climatique comme un marathon, et puis le fait que les municipalités ne peuvent pas travailler seules là-dessus, qu'elles sont tributaires d'autres niveaux de gouvernement, mais aussi de toutes les interactions qu'il y a autour. Et donc, on sait que les gouvernements locaux ne peuvent pas faire seuls face au changement climatique. Donc, j'étais curieuse de savoir, dans votre collectivité, qui sont vos partenaires les plus notables? Quels sont ceux qui sont vos partenaires habituels, mais peut-être aussi des partenaires inattendus? Peut-être de nouveaux acteurs ou pas les partenaires traditionnels dont on... Donc, peut-être nous donner un petit peu ce portrait-là.
Oui, alors, ce qu'il y a de particulier, merci beaucoup pour la question, moi je la trouve vraiment intéressante, c'est que je porte plusieurs chapeaux là, à la Ville de Laval. Là. Je suis responsable de la division de l'aménagement du territoire là, du côté politique là, qui couvre à la fois l'urbanisme, le développement économique et l'environnement. Ça fait en sorte qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui viennent me parler, beaucoup de promoteurs qui viennent me présenter leurs projets. Et puis ce que je trouve ce qui m'a particulièrement étonnée, c'est que suite là, à l'adoption là, de notre nouveau code de l'urbanisme, les promoteurs se le sont vraiment appropriés et puis là me parlent de projets sans voiture, de quartiers avec du transport, des voitures partagées à l'entrée, de reverdir. Donc, ils sont vraiment... je sens une grande ouverture, ce qui est un peu étonnant. D'ailleurs, notre maire à la Ville de Laval a publié dernièrement un livre qui s'appelle « Des quartiers sans voiture ». Et puis là, les promoteurs viennent me voir avec le livre en me disant que c'est vraiment un excellent livre. Oui, donc ça, je pense que c'est un appui inédit, là, inattendu là, de la part là, des promoteurs, quelque chose auquel on ne s'attendait pas nécessairement, là, en fait. Puis c'est sûr qu'on a l'appui habituel là, des groupes environnementaux qui, eux, nous soutiennent dans nos initiatives. Là. D'ailleurs, même sur le conseil municipal, il y a un de mes collègues qui siégeait auparavant dans un organisme très militant, qui maintenant s'occupe là, des questions d'environnement avec moi. Donc, c'est sûr que ça vient aussi donner là, de la crédibilité à ce qu'on fait, là, ce qu'on met de l'avant. Donc, je dirais, sinon, c'est nos partenaires là, habituels.
Mayor Alty?
I think for me, it would be the northern development community. And so there's a lot of the houses in the north are modular, and it was dominantly one man that did a lot of the development, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And if you saw him in the street, he's this gruff guy, and so we put in the Energy Guide 80 stipulation. He's like, but then he went to his modular factory down south and said, oh, we're going to do this. And so now all the houses since then have been, I think it ended up actually being Energy Guide 85 and above. And he was just like, actually, this is really good. And we're like, thank you. But it was great because he's the one that develops most of the housing in Yellowknife. And so now all the new stock, at least, because in Yellowknife, actually, 70% of our energy consumption is in heating fuel. So we're still on oil. And so to actually get these energy efficient homes, it's easier than retrofitting. But yeah, the business community, I think, has really been one of the big partners too. We have a waste management contractor who was like, you know, you could do this change at the solid waste facility, and you could extend your landfill cycle from 7 years to 10 years. And it was just a case of, you know, changing our practice. And we're like, oh, thanks. Yeah, he did. Actually, he lost the RFP. He didn't even get that business opportunity in the end. But he comes forward with ideas. He bids on them. If he wins, he wins. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But he's coming forward with ideas. So it's definitely the business community's been a good partner.
Mayor Heltz?
Geneviève, do you mind asking the question in English? Like, just so I'm doing my very best and my comprehension's pretty good, but I want to make sure that I actually answer it accurately.
Yes, absolutely. So making sure that understanding that local governments cannot tackle climate change in isolation. In your community, what examples of some of your most notable partners, some of the usual partners that we hear quite a lot about, but also maybe some, unexpected ones that have been champions or that have helped move climate action in your community?
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Poirier was talking earlier in her opening remarks about the importance of regional collaboration, and certainly we are seeing that. We have the Capital Regional District is our regional government, and this is just an example. It has taken a little bit of pushing and prodding at that table over the last 8 years. We unanimously declared a climate emergency in the beginning of 2019, and that was quite surprising to get a unanimous vote on that. But since that time, the budgeting has followed, and so rather than each municipality in our region developing a home retrofit program, we're developing a regional retrofit program. And so that's, I think, the regional government is a really useful partner. For people who might be attending later, there's a session hosted by the Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Climate Leadership Plan to talk about collaborative climate planning. And that's been a really unexpected partnership. It's a little bit outside of the city of Victoria, but it's all of the local governments and all of the First Nations on Vancouver Island and coastal communities, as well as youth, working together to develop both a resilience and adaptation plan out to resilience, adaptation, and mitigation plan out to 2030. And that group came together in 2019 as a side session, I guess, of the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. And it's been very satisfying work and very challenging work. And to those who attend the workshop later, you'll hear a little bit about the challenges. But I think that's really been unexpected to think about. And I think this is probably a useful takeaway for folks. It includes big cities like Victoria and very rural communities up and down the coast, as well as First Nations. And so to have that those partners have come together to develop this plan has been, I think, surprising, unexpected, and also very satisfying.
Do the next one.
Any other? No? Okay. So that's very interesting, and knowing that all of these communities in Vancouver Island are coming together, working on this. It's actually a great segue to my next question, which is about a larger community with the COP27 coming up in Egypt in about a month. And as usual, there's high hopes around these types of gathering and what will be accomplished there, all of the countries of the world coming together, talking about the next steps of climate action. And so in 27 years since the first COP in Berlin, there's been significant action on climate change. But we all know that it's still not at the scale or the speed that it needs to be. So Mayor Help, what is required to move the magnitude of action required? Is it governance? Is it financing? Is it buy-in? Is it political will? What is your take on that? How can we make it bigger and better and faster?
All of the above, everything you just said. I talked yesterday about my network grid interviews that I was doing to figure out, what I'm going to do next and looking at opportunities and so on. And one of the people that I spoke with, I won't say who because they're all confidential, said that we're going to need to start thinking as a community about, as a country, a national community, about what happens if we don't meet our goals. We're going to need to start grappling with that reality. And I almost wanted to stick my fingers in my ear and say, no, not yet. Like we can't, and he's probably more realistic than I am. But I think to your question, all of the above, we need massive injections of public and private capital into both adaptation and mitigation solutions. We can't, back in the introduction of the session, Megan was talking about silos. We can't afford silos. Like there's an emergency, and you know, I keep talking about these 7 years. We've got 7 years, so we've just kind of, COVID was a perfect example. When there's a crisis, we all throw our traditional ways of acting out the door, and we cooperate better more than we ever have. And I think that's got to be a lesson. So yes, more financing, you know, really quick legislative changes to give local governments the authority they need to get things done. And then, you know, and this is why FCM and ICLEI and these conferences are so useful, because we've got to scale up. And this is why the VICLIT plan is so exciting as well. We don't, like, every community in the country doesn't need to be developing an electric vehicle strategy. Like there's got to be, you know, templates that then can be crafted. And I know that's coming, but so acceleration, financing, and shift in authority, I think will help to get us there. But I feel worried. 7 years is not a long time to reverse, quite frankly, hundreds of years worth of devastation.
Madame la conseillère?
Oui, c'est certain que je suis tout à fait d'accord avec Lisa. C'est toutes ces réponses là, qui s'appliquent. Ça prend plus de volonté politique, plus de gouvernance, plus de financement, une meilleure adhésion là, de la population. Faut éduquer la population. Il faut continuer à faire ça pour qu'ils adhèrent. Donc, c'est un travail en continu. Les villes peuvent en faire beaucoup, mais elles ne peuvent pas tout faire. Là. Je veux dire, on n'arrête pas de le dire, mais ce qu'elles peuvent faire, c'est ce que Yellowknife est en train de faire, c'est ce que Laval est en train de faire, c'est ce que de multiples autres municipalités là, à travers le pays font. C'est de modifier leur réglementation pour de travailler sur l'aménagement de leur territoire. Ça, c'est des choses que les villes ont le pouvoir de faire. Donc, il faut s'attaquer à ce sur quoi on a une capacité. Mais c'est sûr que le financement doit venir avec. Là. Si le gouvernement fédéral se donne des objectifs de réduction très importants, puis ensuite nous refile la responsabilité, il faut que le financement vienne avec. Je pense puis je vais donner un exemple très concret qu'on est en train de vivre à Laval. On a commandé 50 autobus électriques pour la Société de transport de Laval. Donc, c'est un investissement majeur, ces autobus-là. Mais les autobus, il faut les charger. Ça prend le garage pour les autobus n'est pas de la bonne dimension. Les autobus doivent être placés de façon différente avec des bornes. Ça prend tout un réseau électrique, des capacités de charge importantes. Et on avait un appel d'offres pour avoir un garage électrique pour lequel on avait notre financement bouclé en fonction des estimés. Mais la soumission est arrivée 60 millions au-dessus. Puis là, on est en train de vivre ça là. Donc là, on est en train de faire des appels pour essayer de trouver le financement manquant pour avoir notre garage électrique pour les autobus électriques, pour le transport en commun. Donc ça, on le vit présentement, nous. Vous allez le vivre bientôt. Là. Donc, ça nous prend un financement adéquat pour les projets, puis aussi quand il y a des changements dans les projets. Donc, une certaine adaptabilité là, pour aller chercher les sous supplémentaires quand les soumissions sont trop élevées.
So I would say better education, better communications, and better financial, plus everything that was said. But for better education, I think of when Earth Week comes along, I get all these letters written from students. And so, you know, it's probably appropriate at the grade 1 that their commitment is, I won't litter. That's the same letter I'm getting from high school students. And so there's no real ideas on or education in that regards. And Ça s'explique, CBC podcast, if you want to catch it, did an episode last week about the need for better environmental education in our schools. The financial skills capacity that we're going to need in our community governments. So being able to build climate impacts and adaptation into economic decision making. And I think of, it was a couple of years ago when we put in triple bottom line in our budget. And it was basically an exercise in creative writing when our rec staff would try to do a triple bottom line for the Santa Claus parade or the Easter skate. I was like, ugh. So we need real, like, I can't make a good political decision if I don't have that good financial and climate change aspects. And we're all short-staffed right now, so really making sure that that future generation is going to school so that they can come work for our community governments. And then communications, I think of, the Fraser Work Institute has a report, it's called You Don't Have to Live Here, Why Housing Messages Are Backfiring and 10 Things We Can Do About It. So, and I think a lot of those messages, or the way that backfires, is related to climate change too. We talk a lot about greenhouse gas emissions, which is this jargon, and like, oh, it's 10 elephants, and I'm like, well, how many elephants does it take to like kill the planet? And it's just, it's hard to understand. And so we really need to do a better job, I think, in communicating. And when it talks about COVID, it's easy, like wear a mask, stay this, do that. Okay, I can do that. But yeah, the whole, and the kids commit to like, I'm gonna drive less. And then they get to the age of driving and they forget that commitment that they made when they were 6. So yeah, how can we all wrap it all together?
Can I add one thing based on jumping off of Rebecca's comments? I forgot to mention this earlier, but this notion of triple bottom line, and I get it, that is a bit of a challenging exercise. But I think what might work, and we've just kind of dipped our toe in the water, what might work in terms of accelerating, particularly at municipal scale and things we can control, is climate-based budgeting. And so we've started this in our 5 big departments and asked them to quantify how much carbon they were using in last year, and then set a goal for this year. And again, it's just kind of toe in the water. Oslo has done an amazing job of this. If anyone wants to look at, they've got a whole carbon budget. But I think, again, municipal emissions are only a fragment of what is actually needed to change, but showing this kind of leadership at the local level, A, helps us reduce our emissions, but then B, starts to show private corporations that carbon-based budgeting is possible. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks. And I have the honor of the last question. We're going to do it rapid fire, so you have to be quick with your answer. But so we were talking a bit about the international and what's going to happen in Egypt, but coming back to Canada, coming back to Ottawa, we know that we're expecting the release of the National Adaptation Strategy soon, right? I imagine many of you in the room were consulted on its development, and we're expecting it, in the coming weeks. If you had the ability to influence that strategy right now, with a wave of a magic wand, what would you like to see in it, or how would you influence it?
Not that it's 100 more different funding pots, that they take all that money, roll it into the Canada Community Building Fund, which is up for 10-year renewal in 2024. So negotiations are beginning this fall, but really want it to not be application-based. We have asset management plans. Give us the funding. It's 10 years. We'll be able to plan for it.
Excellent. That was a good rapid fire, too.
Oui. Moi, je dirais, dans le même ordre d'idée, d'accorder un financement dédié aux municipalités qui ont produit des plans puis qui ont identifié leurs priorités d'action pour avoir un impact concret là, sur la résilience et la sécurité des citoyens. Et puis, deuxièmement, très rapidement, que les dépenses pour l'environnement soient aussi considérées comme des dépenses de prévention en santé. Donc, que ce soit plus largement vu comme de la prévention.
Excellent. And Mayor, helps?
I would just say, and again, fitting with the theme of this conference, unless the adaptation strategy has equity built into it and taking care of our most vulnerable residents, it won't be a good strategy. And I think about all the people who live in Victoria without homes. We have a homelessness issue here, as does every city across the country. The wildfire smoke, the heat domes, all of those things have a real impact. And an adaptation and resilience plan nationally has to take into account, and I would say almost foreground, the needs of people who are vulnerable, because if the plan does that, builds resilience and a strong adaptation from that perspective, it's going to be good for the rest of us.
Good point. That's a great way to bring it back to the theme of the conference and the need for inclusivity. So thank you for that. So that brings us to the end of this session. I have 2 minor housekeeping items that I just wanted to address with you. One, I believe the coffee is down 1 level. You'll find it. 2, please leave the headsets on the table. don't take them with you. Don't slip them in your purse. You can't get any money for them. Just leave them on the table, and our staff will collect them all up. So we'd appreciate that. So with that, can you please help me thank FCM for bringing us all together, taking the time to reflect on the MSIP program and the impact it's had, and all our elected officials here for sharing their insights, for sharing their vulnerabilities, for just contributing to this great event. Much appreciated.